Kia ora, Aaliyah. Aaliyah, I wanted to sit and chat with you today about the spoken word that I've released called An Attempt. It covers some heavy topics around some of the thoughts people can have around suicide and mental health struggle, and that's actually not something that I have personally journeyed in terms of suicidal thought, but this piece has come together through hearing some of your story, and I wondered if you could just share with us a bit about that today. Could you talk into a little bit about what that journey was for you of finding Jesus as an answer or a part of the answer to your healing?
Yeah. So kia ora. Thank you for having me. I just feel really honoured that you would ask to hear my story, and I think, first of all, it really speaks to your integrity as an artist and a person that you noticed that there was a topic that needed to be talked about, and you wanted to use your platform to be able to give that opportunity and that invitation and do it in a way that was still authentic. So kia ora for that. So for me, Jesus came in really unexpectedly into my story. Probably the last place I thought I'd end up. Definitely through a lot of my teen years, a lot of my adolescence, I just really struggled with depression and anxiety and eating disorders, and just had like a whole alphabet soup of things that I just couldn't really cope with. And I remember a lot of my time when I was in and out of hospital, I made a friend who talked to me a lot about Jesus. And in my mind at that time, Christianity as a big picture thing seemed really against my values. I heard a lot of people say it's about love, but then how that was presented didn't fit. So a lot of those conversations, probably more arguments in loving ways. I didn't know at the time, but we were really just like planting seeds and thoughts, and then knowing this friend and his family, I was able to see what that actually looked like, what that actually meant when people said that Christians live by love and that they are taught that by Jesus. And and so that was about 2 years before I got to the point where I was like, okay, I need to try something. And I think you capture really beautifully in the poem that moment of just being like, I've tried everything, and I really truly felt like that. I was like, come on man, I'm ticking the boxes. I am putting in the mahi, I'm working hard, and it's not getting better. And I think it was a really scary place for me, because suddenly I didn't have direction. Before that, especially as a teenager, you kind of think you know everything, but you're still at a point of being like, okay, adults are saying this, so let's do it, or this is by the book, so let's do that. And it wasn't working. It wasn't leading me anywhere, which is really disappointing, I think. Especially as a kid, already coming to a place in myself of kind of being like, oh, the world's disappointing, this isn't what I wanted it to be, to then being like, oh, well, I can get past this, and then, oh, I can't. Apparently I can't. And so that moment for me came at just one particular night. We'd actually lost a boy in my school to suicide, and I didn't personally know him, but my friends at the time did. And I remember a thought that really stuck out to me was, now not only do I not see hope, and now not only am I in this darkness, but kind of feels like everyone around me is as well.
The kind of ripple effects, you mean, of that person taking their life had on the people around them?
And it really brings into question what does hope look like? in situations where the circumstances just suck. Like, what does that look like? And so for me and myself that night, I feel like I had made a decision. Like I was like, I'm over this. I can't keep fighting. I don't have the strength left. I remember feeling really physically and emotionally and just spiritually drained.
Right.
My tank was empty. I just had nothing left to give to this fight. And yet at the same time, I kind of knew the effects that it would have past me. And so I really, I don't know, I was in this argument with myself of trying to convince myself to stay a little bit, and looking back at it now, I even see that as a God thing.
Wow.
Just that second guessing. And I remember I was sitting in bed and I was just crying, like ugly crying, snot everywhere, like it's not a pretty thing.
Messy, huh?
Messy, super messy. And I remember this going through this list in my head. I've done this, I've done that, I've done this, I've done that, justifying it to myself a little bit. And I just remember this thought saying, oh, well, you haven't tried prayer before. You know, this thing that your friend has been talking about for the past 2 years. You haven't tried that yet.
Whoa.
And I remember the reason I remember that is because it didn't feel like my thought, which is hard to explain.
Right.
Yeah. Especially when I already felt pretty crazy, mental health wise. It's one of those things where you're constantly
hearing voices.
Yeah, I was like, you're kidding. Just add that to my list. No. But that's why it stuck out to me, is because I was like, that's not me. I would never actually give that a go. That's not what I believe. But I couldn't shake it, no matter how much I tried. And so at that point, I was like, what do I have to lose? You know, only everything to gain and nothing to lose.
Wow.
So I didn't know anything about prayer. I didn't know anything about God or Jesus, really, past arguments. And, you know, especially as a teenager, probably better at arguing than listening to the other side. So I really was going into it a bit blind, just what I'd seen on movies, and I laugh about it now, but at the time it's all I knew. So I literally, in my room by myself, did a little bit of a like snotty whop and got out of bed, knelt beside it, put my hands together, closed my eyes, and I have no idea what I said. No idea what I said, but at some point in it, something along the lines of, you know, this is your chance, Jesus. If you're there, you know, come at me. Show me what you got. Because, this is really the end of the line for me. And I remember this, I describe it now as like a bubble, but at the time I just felt like this weight lifting off me, and I felt like I could breathe for the first time. And I now would describe that as peace, and at the time I didn't even really have that word in my vocabulary because everything was so heightened all of the time, that this moment of just quiet, and there was nothing going on in my head, and it didn't feel like everything was sitting on top of me. And the reason I describe it as this bubble is because the circumstances were still the change. Still the same. Still the same. Yeah. The circumstances were still the same. And it was really...
But in your why or something was different?
Yeah, it just shifted. And I remember I didn't have this sudden, I believe in Jesus and that my whole life is going to be different. And that's awesome. It was just that moment of, it's quiet. I'm going to go to bed.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so you pray on your knees beside your bed, and then you go to sleep with peace, which is kind of already a miracle. But in the poem, I wrote a line hugely inspired by like part of the story you told me where it was the next day I noticed things had started to change, and like this part of the story kind of blew my mind because you can share it. There were things that were different, right, when you woke up.
Yeah, and it's to this day so surreal to think about, because I know this isn't everyone's experience, but for me it was really just like a 180 turnaround. Like I woke up that morning and it just felt different. And at the time I was struggling with OCD, so I had compulsions to tap everything, and I had to tap every surface in the house that I passed by a certain way and so many times, and if it didn't feel right I had to do it again, and it really it interfered with my whole day, you know. I struggled to go to school, I struggled to hang out with my friends, I struggled to see my family, because I had to do this thing that I knew was weird, like I knew wasn't normal, not everyone's going around tapping things, but I couldn't stop in myself, because in my head it was like, if you don't do this, something terrible is going to happen.
Okay.
And yet that morning I got up and I was still thinking about it. I was like, that was a weird thing. And I remember I got up and I went and I got breakfast, and it wasn't until I was like sitting down in the lounge with my bowl of cereal that I thought, oh, I didn't touch anything, I didn't tap anything. And I remember this moment of anticipation, like waiting for the crash and burn and the tears and the panic and my world is crumbling, something terrible is going to happen. I remember waiting for that feeling to come, and waiting, and it just didn't.
Wow.
And it was crazy that this that one night took this thing that had been plaguing my everyday life for like 2 years, and it was just gone. And I remember that just being like well, if you could do that, I better give him another shot. Yeah.
So your response was, you felt like God has done something in my life, God's answered a prayer.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember I called my friend that afternoon, I think, and I just said, hey, so that Jesus thing, maybe it's not all bad after all. And I remember him like screaming down the phone in excitement, like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, it's happened, finally, it's been 2 years of arguing. And he didn't actually know the rest of that story for a really long time. All he knew was that I called him one day out of the blue and said, hey,
I think I believe in Jesus.
I think maybe there's something to it, maybe.
Wow.
And it was interesting because it was like in my heart and my bones and my body and my wairua, it was from that moment, that is when I was saved, that is when I believed in Jesus. But took a while for my head to catch up. Yeah. You know, I still had to go back and be like, was that really Jesus? Or, well, I don't know if this is actually what happens.
The wrestle of it, and healing and moving through illness of any kind is like, it's a roller coaster, right?
Yeah.
It's a journey, and there's ups and downs and waves that come and go, which is, I kind of love the imagery in the video of the waves coming and going. It's a bit like that with our emotions and with our healing as well, hey?
Yeah, and I think what was really validating for me was at the time I was still in therapy, and the people that I was with, we would do kind of like, not a survey, but a check-in every session, and you would kind of rate we were on the mood scale, I guess. And 6 months later I was discharged, which again, another miracle. I've been in therapy for 2 years now, consistently, every week, sometimes multiple times. I had 3 different therapists at one point. You know, I had a busy schedule, but 6 months later I was completely discharged from all of the services, and not in a drop and run way, but to the point that my therapist told me, she was like, it would be unethical for me to keep working with you.
Wow, because of the healthy space you'd come to.
Yeah, and she printed this graph for me at the end, and you know, there's the little X and Y axis, and kind of in the middle of it, there's this black dotted line, and that represented the average mood of people. You know, if you're having like an okay day, it's not the best, not the worst, you're probably sitting somewhere on that line. And for my whole time seeing her, I was down the bottom. I wasn't even like quarter, like I was just at the bottom.
Yeah.
And every once in a while you could see where I kind of tried to lie to her a little bit, and it got a little bit up, like half a square, and then it goes back down because I didn't have the energy to lie about it. Yeah, I was just like, yeah, I'm sad, and it still sucks for a really long time. And there's this point in November of 2018, and it's this little dot that anywhere else you'd probably look over it, but it's this little dot, and from that point it's gone low, 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 and then just kept going up for the 6 months until she had to discharge me. So I think for me that was also just really validating in that struggle of being like, oh, did that even really happen? To have something like physical and visual like that to say, my life is different. How I'm seeing the world, how I'm interacting with the world and the people around me and myself is changed. Yeah, it's pretty special.
Measurable change, which is so beautiful. Well, I really want to thank you, Aaliyah, for allowing your story to be heard. And I know it was part of our kōrero, like there was many drafts of this piece of poetry, and a process of meeting together, talking about language, talking about feeling, talking about some language, even though it was truthful, may not be helpful, and kind of a real journeying of coming to the version that's being released. And that's been a really special journey for me as an artist. And I know we got to the end of it and we said, cool, here's the piece. And then I said to you, like, this can be it. Like, this can be all this journey needs to be, and it can be a gift for the both of us and finish there, or I can record it and release it and share it beyond us. What do you think? And I remember you saying to me, like, do it. And then you said, if my experience and my story can positively impact even one person, it would be worth sharing. And I really do hope that it helps a lot of people, even in just the naming of some of this. Like, it's not easy to talk about, and I hope that putting language, naming some of the experiences helps people feel seen, like you're not the only one going through this, and just also the idea that it doesn't have to be something that's just kind of managed, but that it's something that there is healing and freedom available, and like that upward graph, that trend positive is available to us. And so I just, again, I want to say thank you for letting me journey with you, and and thank you for being willing to share your story.
Well, thank you. Something that really stands out to me about you and about this whole process is just the humility you've had in approaching it, and it's been a real honour to work with you and to have a space to voice my story. And I hope that a part of this project is that others will then find a space too, and like you said, that people will know that they aren't alone in experiencing it, but that there is hope, and that hope doesn't have to be far away. You know, the first step is kind of just taking a chance. You know, okay then, Jesus, if you're there, show me, because nothing to lose and everything to gain.
So good. Hey, thanks for talking with me today.
Thank you.